Carmen. How are you doing? This is Yolanda.
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Thank you for being here.
Yes.
Can y'all see me?
Yes, I can.
Carolyn Sims?
Yes, ma'am.
You can see me and hear me?
I can. Yes.
Okay, all right. Just wanted to make sure.
Yolanda, I can send over we just got out of staff meeting. I can send over the PowerPoint now, or do you want me to wait till afterwards?
Whatever is best for you. Afterwards is fine too.
Okay.
Whatever is easiest for you.
Okay. There was just one additional attachment I was gonna add to it. So I can try to do that real quick before we get started.
Okay. Thank you. Hi, Michelle.
Hi there. How are you?
Thank you for being here.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for having me.
I do have a quick question for you guys. Would you prefer to take questions as they come in or take them all at the end? And I will monitor the chat for you during.
It doesn't matter for me.
I'm good either way as well. I don't know
Okay.
why my screen is not clear. That is very not pretty. Well, I don't know. Y'all might like it better that way.
No, I feel like
Uh,
we've all been WebEx and Zooming for so long that there's always one issue that happens.
I have to apologize about my camera. We have tracking cameras on our laptops, and there is a huge delay. And so that's why it's like frozen right now, but I'm actually moving around, and it'll show my movements in a minute.
No.
I think mine may be doing some of the same. Know why I don't have it where it's always my issues. And it's almost like it's freezing up. Am I freezing on y'all's end? Because I feel like it's doing that on my end.
Here I
No,
am shaking my head. You can't see me shake my head, but you know, you're not freezing up on our end. You're just dark.
Okay, I'm just dark.
Yeah.
Like
It's like
correct.
you are dark, but your background is not. You're in that incognito mode.
I did nothing.
Well, welcome everybody. We appreciate you being here. Carmen and Michelle, if you all are ready, whenever you guys are ready, I will introduce you and we'll get started.
I'm good. I'm just maybe I can't get this to go not be dark. So if y'all are okay with that, with me looking dark, I'm okay with it. So I don't continue to waste anybody's time.
Oh no. I think it's fine. And
Okay.
as long as you're okay with it.
Yeah, I mean I probably like myself better like this, but so y'all don't have to see. But no.
Well, my video is frozen, so y'all are gonna have to take a look at my ugly mug there. That's totally frozen.
Well, all we see is your name right now, so okay.
Well, I'll get us started. Well, thank you everybody for coming to our May webinar. We are so excited today to have Carmen Turlington with the Division of Juvenile Justice and Michelle Wilson with BI Incorporated here to teach us about GPS and electronic monitoring. Carmen is with the Division of Juvenile Justice. She is the Court Services Quality Assurance Supervisor. Prior to that role, she served as the Special Projects Court Counselor at the Central Office, where she reviewed and provided technical support to court counselors, supervisors, and chief court counselors regarding electric monitors and YDC commitments. She sits on the Court Services and multidisciplinary policy committees. She began working with DJJ in April of 1999 as a juvenile court counselor in District 14 in Durham, where she helped implement the District Juvenile Drugs Treatment Court program. She then transferred to District 10 in Wake County and served as a juvenile court counselor. She left the department for a while she worked for Wake County Human Services Child Protective Services for a period of time, and then she returned to DJJ in Wake County in November of 2013. She earned her bachelor's degree in social work from the University of North Carolina at Wilmington in 1996. Thank you so much for being with us today, Carmen.
Yeah, sure.
And
Yeah, you can go ahead and introduce Michelle as well.
And Michelle is an account manager with BI Incorporated. She has served with them since 2018, and she has a wealth of experience in technical support and management. As an account manager, she engages with multiple clients on-site and off-site to help them replace, install, and troubleshoot BI hardware and software. Currently, she serves as the account manager for the North Carolina Department of Public Safety for the adult probation and parole side and juvenile justice. And in her role, she has organized and trained over 4,000 public safety officers on equipment, functionality, and software. She also organizes and performs the monitoring changeouts of over 4,000 probationers. Additionally, she has provided court testimony related to the technical functioning of monitoring equipment and the recording and storage of GPS records. She also reviews suspected tampers, troubleshoots equipment for officers, and manages inventory in all 100 counties. Prior to her time working with the BI Incorporated, she was an installer for Reliant Monitoring from 2012 to 2018. And so she has over 15 years of experiencing and managing probationers, 25 years of government experience, and 7 years of BI Incorporated, and she is fully certified in all of BI's technologies. So we're again thankful to have both Carmen and Michelle with us today, and I will turn it over to them.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having us. I'm just going to kind of go into a little bit about the requirements for EM for JJ. And some of this you guys are going to know in regards to like the order and, you know, what's required, but just want to touch base on that. And we welcome all your questions. Yolanda has sent us a few that you guys hear on a regular basis, or you may have in regards to the functionality of equipment and maybe tampers and things. And my handy dandy coworker, Michelle Wilson, she will be more apt to answer all of those with her expertise. But I will start with just this quick PowerPoint presentation. See if I can get it to share. Everything's a little delayed, so. Okay, can y'all see this? It says I'm about to share.
Not yet, but
Not yet,
I
okay.
think it is coming.
Okay.
Yep, there it is.
There it is, okay. All right, so just to talk about our EM vendor and installer. So our EM vendor is BI Incorporated, which is who Michelle works for. That is a state contracted electronic monitoring vendor. We have been using BI since 2012. They provide us with a continuum of electronic monitoring technologies and services. And I will say that they are on the up end of all of the technologies and staying abreast of new equipment and what have you in the electronic monitoring field. We do have our account representative that's assigned to us. And then we have total access that's also through our vendor, which is our secure web-based case management software system. And that is where we can go in and track our juveniles. All of our juveniles are entered into that system. And we go in and make their zones and their schedules, and we can see when they have any alerts of that nature and run all kinds of different reports. And then through BI, we have 24/7 monitoring center access. So they are there and secure and available to us 24/7, 365 days a year. And then BI contracts with Reliant Monitoring Services, and they are the agency or provider that does the installations, de-installs, and service requests. So when I started way back in 99 as a court counselor, we did our own installations, and you would just pray to the moon and the stars that when you took a juvenile out to their home to do the installation, that everything would align. So when I came back to the division in 2013 and we were contracted with Reliant, it was like Christmas morning with that accessibility to them. And so we as court counselors are still required to go out to do all the installations and deinstalls and service requests, but you have Reliant who does the actual servicing for us, which is really, really nice. Next, we'll move into determining the use and types of EM. Of course, y'all are aware, everybody, all of our juveniles, they have to have a court order for any type of electronic monitoring. We use electronic monitoring pre-adjudication, predisposition, post-disposition, as part of PRS and in conjunction a lot of times with community-based commitment if we have any of those juveniles. When we look at who is appropriate for EM and for a recommendation, you know, we always want to consider the protection of the community and any additional information that is on their YASI assessments. And then that also we look into that or use that information in determining the appropriate type of equipment to use. So we have 3 different types of equipment that is made available to us from BI, and that is a GPS unit, an RF or radio frequency cell unit, or a radio frequency landline unit. And I would say 98% of our juveniles are on GPS monitoring. And then the cell unit, we very rarely see. We did have a district that was in the Piedmont area that they really liked using the cell unit, but they have pretty much all transitioned over into GPS. And I liken the cell unit to just, if you would use that if you just want to monitor if the juvenile was coming in and out for curfew. You know, you didn't have concerns about needing to track them 24/7 and be able to locate them, but you wanted to know if they were coming in on time for curfew, because with the cell, it's not going to tell you exactly where the juvenile is. And then we have the landline unit, and I honestly don't think we have used the landline unit here in juvenile in probably 2+ years. Michelle may know more offhand, but I don't think I've signed off on the landline for a bill in several years. And then this just will go into additional information about the types of the EM. So the location tracking, which is what we call our GPS unit, it's the BI Locate XT, and it is GPS, Wi-Fi, and cellular location technology. It uses multiple satellites and signals to help collect that accurate data, location data. And if the juvenile is fully charging the batteries, it has a 60-hour battery life on the single charge. And it also has a beacon option, which we highly recommend. And pretty much all of our juveniles have that beacon assigned to them. Sometimes when juveniles are maybe, I'll use this for Wake County, when we have Wren House as the runaway shelter and the juvenile may go there, or as a respite, they may not acquire the beacon because of how expensive it is, and there's nobody there to monitor. It could get stolen or lost or destroyed, and so we would just say that they would just have the GPS monitoring transmitter on them. Everything is up to date with the LTE technology, very similar to our cell phones. And like I said earlier, 98% of our juveniles are currently monitored with GPS. And then we have our radio frequencies, which are our BI HomeGuard 2020s. And they just monitor the absence or the presence of their client at a specific location, which is typically their home. And it is available in cellular or landline. And Yolanda, just stop me if there's questions that arise, because I talk very fast, sorry. And then moving on to installation. So how do our juveniles get on the unit? So they're ordered in court to be placed on electronic monitoring. The court counselors are required to submit an enrollment form to BI. And it's a 2-page questionnaire pretty much that goes through what their charges are, what their if it's a violent offense, a serious offense, and then, you know, the location of where they're going to be, the parent's name, their first name, last initial, their NC join number, address, and any specifics about scheduling or location that you would want the installation to be. So that's submitted to BI. And BI then receives that. If there's any issues or concerns with the enrollment form, they will send that back out for additional information from the court counselors. And typically within 24 to 48 hours, BI works with Reliant to get this installation scheduled. And the installer that's assigned or takes on that job, they will reach out to the court counselor to schedule that installation. And per our policy, we require that a JCC is present, juvenile court counselor is present along with the parent guardian during all installations, de-installations, and service repairs. So unlike on the adult side, it can just be the offender and the installer. We do not allow that, and we require that the court counselor be present at all times. And those installations can occur in the juvenile's home, in the YDC, detention facility, basically anywhere that juvenile is located, and is needed for enrollment. And I think I just saw a question pop up.
Yes. So the question is, wanted to ask a quick question and for clarification. In cases where the court orders electronic monitors for juveniles, is Reliant Monitoring Service the exclusive provider across the state? He's asking because he's noticed a recurring issue. Court counselors often say that installations can't occur until the following week, and the judge will not authorize release until the monitor is in place. He says, I completely understand that schedules can be tight, but I want to confirm whether this is truly due to the vendor limitations or if there's flexibility in how these installs are coordinated. At times, it seems like the EM installers are treated as the busiest people in the world, and I'm just trying to better understand whether that's a statewide bottleneck or a scheduling issue at the local level.
So I can start answering that, and Michelle may have some follow-up on that. There are at least several years ago when I attended an installer training, the majority of our installers with Reliant are part-time employees. There are a few full-time, but we should not be. And if there is an issue, we need to know, because our court counselor should be getting that order in and scheduling, or I mean, not order, but the enrollment form into BI. And with our contract, we have that, are supposed to have that scheduled within 24 to 48 hours. And if there's specific situations, I would be glad to look into them, but we should not be holding off and saying it's taking a week to get a installation done. And I know sometimes right out of court, they're not prepared for that, but even if a juvenile was ordered on Monday in court, and he's ordered to be on electronic monitoring or released from detention to electronic monitoring, by the end of the week, we should be able to have placed that juvenile on electronic monitoring. And Michelle, I don't know if you want to follow up on that with the more specifics of the relationship with Reliant and BI.
Yeah. So Reliant is under contract with BI to perform all installs, deinstalls, services within 24 hours of receipt of that work order. Okay. And with juveniles, there is kind of a special provision there because we require that the court counselor be present during the installation. So delays can occur due to a court counselor's schedule. The installers are to reach out to the court counselor to schedule that install to ensure that that court counselor is available. And I do know that in detention centers, they do tend to get delayed. It has gotten better, but it was just due to the operations of the detention center. You know, we have to respect their schedule as well. So as Carmen had mentioned, that if there are any delays, please report those because we will investigate them. And we can't fix something we are not aware of because we do hold Reliant very responsible for any delays or any problems that are occurring, but we need to know about those.
And I would say on our end, you know, we do know everybody's schedules are tight and, you know, things do happen, but we shouldn't be waiting, you know, like I said, if he's ordered on Monday to be released from detention to as soon as electronic monitoring is available, and we schedule the 7 to 10 day hearing, secure custody review hearing, and come back, and that juvenile's not released. That's not okay. That is not okay. There's a reason, you know, there's a reason why somebody has dropped the ball, and so I will investigate. I will contact Michelle, and she investigates, and we try to figure out and mitigate that situation. But I'm not sure which attorney that was that asked that, but if they want to reach out, I forgot to add our contact information to this slide presentation, but we can get that to everybody. Please let us know and reach out to us about that because it should not be taking that long for that to occur. But great question. Thank you. So next zones, the next thing to do after the juvenile is ready to be installed, we require by our policy that all juveniles have at a minimum a primary zone, which we consider their home zone, in total access when they're utilizing GPS. So that would help with the decrease if that zone is in there and it's properly in there with the right feet and everything. And Michelle she's an expert on that, and I'm going to let her cover the zone piece. But it will help minimize the amount of erroneous alerts that you may receive. But it'll also, you know, keep, if the juvenile is not where they're supposed to be, it's going to let us know that as well. So like I said, there are many different types of zones that the juvenile can have, but at a minimum, we do require the primary zone. And that's where the juvenile is currently living. It's not to say that if they are with mom during the week and they go to dad's on the weekends that they can't change that zone up or add a different zone for going to dad's house or, you know, grandmother's or wherever it may be. But we work with the court counselors to make sure that they've got those zones in there and entered in properly. The division as a whole does not require that schedules be entered into total access, but they are necessary and needed for those juveniles that are allowed leave time. So I think on the adult side, they do have schedules and are required to have schedules, but we do not require that here. And it's just an understanding that if they don't have a schedule in there, that it is basically their own house arrest and they're not allowed to leave at all. So next, this is just our responding to EM alerts and events. I do have a chart that follows in the next two slides in regards to the violent offenders. And then they have a different response protocol for violent offenders and then a different response for your serious offenders or your minor offenders. For violent offenders, if the violation cannot be confirmed or handled over the phone, then the court counselor must leave to respond to the violation at the juvenile's home within 1 hour of notice of the violation. And you'll see in this response time that it does talk about leaving. Or going out to confirm the violation or going to the juvenile's home I came from a district in District 10 where we did not go out for these. We would contact law enforcement. There are some districts that do their on-call workers do go out after hours with the help of another court counselor or with law enforcement. But if there was an after hours violation at least in District 10, where I last was, we would contact law enforcement. Now, if it was during the day, during business hours, then we would go out. The court counselors are to confirm the violation, or, to figure out what's going on, and then determine the response based off of the chart. And any deviation from those responses have to be approved by their chief court counselor. So if, for instance, it says that, they can't get up with the juvenile, they can't get up with the parent guardian, the next response is that you go out to the home. The chief court counselor can say, no, you're not going to go out into the home. You're going to contact law enforcement and follow up, have them follow up. So that would be a deviation in that response protocol. All of our violent offenders, your class A through E felonies, they're going to be placed on both call and email alerts, which is what we call high priority. So the monitoring center for every alert, whether it's a high priority or just a call and email, or an email only, they're going to send an email out to the court counselors and everybody in that alert hierarchy, which would be all of the supervisors in that district, as well as the chief court counselor. If it's a high priority case, your A through E felonies, then they're also going to get a phone call, and they're going to start with, if it's during business hours, they'll start with the court counselor, assigned court counselor. And then if they're not able to get that court counselor, they go up the chain, up that hierarchy, until they get somebody on the phone to let them know verbally about that alert. And then if it's after hours, of course, all of our districts have after hours and on staff. And they are gonna,
There, she can't write it out. You can write it out. Yeah.
let the on-call person know, and then it'll go up the chain as well. So next I will show the charts. It's a little hard to see from the video or from the slideshow, but pre-adjudication, pending disposition, these are for your A through E felonies. I'm not going to go through all of them, but this is one that says that the court counselor is to activate, they call the juvenile. If juvenile has no response, they activate a voice response, which we're able to do through Total Access. You notify your supervisor or your chief immediately, and then you, within an hour, you're supposed to respond to the violation, and then go from there. And that's where I was saying that could be a deviate, that your chief would tell you, or your supervisor would advise you not to go out into the field, but to send out law enforcement. And it also talks about post-disposition, what occurs. And like I said, these are all for your A through E felonies. And then we have a different protocol here for your pre-adjudication, pending disposition, and post-disposition for your serious offenders and your minor offenders. And the types of alerts that we see most often, or the majority of the time, are strap tamper, tracker missed callback, which you'll also hear that as basically their battery is dead, and proximity alerts. Your proximity alerts are going to be that the transmitter is not touching your body, basically. Michelle will go into that in more detail with questions. No motion, that means there's been no motion of the transmitter or the beacon, any of that, which is very alarming and concerning. And Michelle kind of tracks those behind the scenes, and can alert us and let us know, because I think on the adult side, a lot of times that means that there's been a medical emergency sometimes. And then you have your enter and leave alerts and events. So those would be like they've left their inclusion zone or they've left their primary zone and they've entered back in. Do we have questions about those that want to be answered right now, or do you want me to keep going and Michelle can step in? How do we want to handle that?
There are no current questions in the chat, at least.
Okay. Then this next sheet right here, we've had, so when requesting, law enforcement's requesting GPS records, and a couple slides down, we'll talk about that. But there's been questions that have come up about what a strap tamper is, what a proximity tamper is. And so BI, because we were getting so many questions from law enforcement specific to juveniles, BI created this handy dandy little sheet right here. And again, it's not very clear, but I have sent that to Yolanda for y'all to have. But it goes through like what cell signal loss is and different other things that were coming up about why are there not GPS points during this time frame that we've requested for this juvenile. So this has been very helpful when law enforcement does request GPS points and there's a question about why they didn't have that full points for that whole entire time period. We are able to send this handy dandy little sheet that they've created for us that goes into, like I said, they had one created that went into great detail, but we felt like this kept it very simple for the juveniles and very specific to a lot of the questions that we receive on the juveniles. So you guys will I feel like this might be something that would be handy for y'all to keep kind of in your back pocket when you have questions. So we do, again, on call and after hours, on weekends and holidays. The on-call court counselor has to log into BI access, BI website, which is Total Access, to check for any recent alerts, both opened and closed since the date of the last check. So every 24 hours throughout that weekend and holidays. And it's their job to go into NC Join and document that case note. Also make phone calls to the families to find out, hey, Johnny, looks like Johnny left the house at 3 o'clock today and hasn't come back into his, into the inclusion zone. Is he at home? What's going on? So we do have that on call and after hours. And then EM records request. We do not aid in the intake or the evaluation of a complaint, and talking about EM records. They are part of the juvenile's court counselor's record, but they are confidential. And law enforcement is not authorized to access any of those records without a court order. And, we kind of drive home to all of our court counselors to please not discuss anything. Let them know about our policy. We'll have officers who call court counselors and just say, I know Johnny's on electronic monitoring. Can you tell me if he was here during this time period? And, we try to impress upon them that you always just have to say it's in your best interest to get a court order, or here's our policy, we need you to get a court order. We do require that all EM requests be in writing, either through a court order or a search warrant. Then they have to be signed by a judge. The search warrant cannot be signed by a magistrate. You guys, as the juvenile's attorneys, we don't require a court order or search warrant for you to access those records, of course, but we do ask that it's still in writing, and typically on your law firm letterhead. And we just send it, and it says approved by DPS General Counsel. I've never known one from an attorney that's not been approved. So it's really just to route it through to DPS General Counsel's office so that they are aware that these records are being requested. It is asked that they be for a specific juvenile, of course, and must include the juvenile's date of birth and specific time periods that they are looking for to be included in those records. We send everything to DPS General Counsel to approve. And then in most cases, so once we created this a smart sheet system last fall where the district will receive that court order or search warrant requesting those records. They submit it through to the smart sheet, and then it goes to their area administrator or their assistant area administrator for the district that they're in, or the area that that district belongs, the West, Piedmont, Central, or East. And then that AA or AAA will approve or deny that request based off if they see that it's a search warrant, but it's signed by a magistrate. So they can kind of head that off and send that back to the district and say, hey, this is signed by a magistrate. Legal counsel is going to deny it. So go ahead and get this, get this completed in the correct way and get it signed by a judge. Once it's approved by the AA or AAA, it then moves on to our general counsel, and then they will approve or deny and give their reasons why if it's a denial. And then it comes back to me and my team here at central office, and then we submit that to BI, and BI has a separate section of the monitoring center that a very under lock and key, basically they do all of the GPS records requests for us and run the points. And if there's additional information that's needed, say mapping or letter of findings or activity summaries, Michelle then runs those reports for us and gets them back to us along with the GPS records, along with the GPS points. And then we upload that back into Smartsheet, and it goes back to the district to be provided to whatever entity asked for those records. And in most cases, the GPS data points will be returned within 3 to 5 business days. And that time frame really varies upon the amount of information that's being requested and the time period that's being requested. So if it is a juvenile who's been on electronic monitoring for 6 months and they want those records for that full entire 6 months, that's going to take a little bit longer for the monitoring center to pull down. But if it's something that's just a few days, a few hours, we typically get that back sooner than the 3 to 5 business days. But that is with our contracts, that is what we typically say. Another question that we see or hear is that the adults can access those records without a court order or without going through BI. And that's not true. They still have, and Michelle can touch on this point, but they still have to have a court order, and they go through the same monitoring center that we do. If it's nights and weekends, we don't have access to those records or the points. We don't have access to those points. Only the monitoring center does. And so if it is something that occurs over the weekend, we're not going to be able to get those points, even if an order is signed by a judge after hours or the weekends. We're not going to have access to those points until we can get those approved by legal counsel and get them to the monitoring center on the next business day. So those are some of the questions that come up more so on law enforcement's end. And then my next slide is just here is, I don't know why it says click title there, but it's just an overview of kind of what the cost is for this equipment. And it's not cheap by any means. We do require by our policy that the family, parent, guardian, custodian, or if the juvenile is over 18 and going on electronic monitoring, we do ask that they sign an agreement, a rules and responsibilities agreement that talks about the price and that they could be held responsible for the amount of the equipment or the damage that was done. So I thought that this would be just a good little tidbit of information that y'all could see and know how much it is, what that unit cost for some kids. And we do have it built into our contract for some damage and loss to property. But we do see some districts, who've had kind of repeat offenders or repeat incidences with equipment being damaged or stolen, that they will, charge with damage to, real property or personal property and do a misdemeanor charge on them. But that is, I think that's my last slide. But I don't know if y'all have questions about this or specific questions more so to what Michelle, or what we can talk about in regards to alerts and like what it looks like to tamper and things, some of those questions that you sent us, Yolanda.
Thank you so much, Carmen. I know one of the questions that I have heard and I've encountered in my own practice is I'll often have kids who say that they've charged their unit, they have done what they're supposed to do, but yet they still get a tamper notification. So is there times when the units can give false notifications? What does that look like if so? Or are there certain things that sometimes lead to notifications that kids may be doing because that makes sense. I'm not sure if I'm wording that correctly, but yes.
I'm gonna let Michelle take over on that.
Okay, so there are kind of, is it false notification? Not really. Okay, there could be an instance where if the monitor is installed incorrectly, because it has to be installed within specific guidelines. And if it, for example, when you insert the strap into the body of the unit, it must be on the second set of holes. So that way there is no gap. And should there be a mistake made during that installation process, you could get an alert for a strap tamper. Okay. As a matter of fact, I don't know. Let's see here. I do have a unit right here. I don't know how well we can see this, but the strap is inserted on each end right here, and then right here. And again, it's specific sizing, and then it must be, the end of the strap must meet the edge of the body on the inside of where the strap housing is. Reason being is because there's a fiber optics that helps detect for a strap tamper. And if there's any gap between the end of the strap and the body, then the light for the fiber optics could go awry, and a break in the light beam, because it's a continuous light beam, if there's any kind of break between that beam, that will register a strap tamper. So again, if it was installed improperly, you will get a strap tamper. And it might not occur that same day. It may occur like a week later because of wear and it bouncing on the ankle and things like that. So we always, when we see that, we do investigate as to, was it installed properly? I look for tamper evidence and everything like that. So we don't take strap tampers lightly at all. We investigate each one because you hate to have somebody accused of something they didn't do. I know that typically if someone, whether it's a juvenile or an adult, they've never had one on before and it's their first time having one on, they play with it a lot for the first 24 hours. It's, human nature, they're curious and everything. So we do see some stuff that happens within the first 24 hours of install. But that would be the most of a false tamper that I would see is just an improper install. I think we said that alleged to have tampered with it. That's the false notification. What kind of alert do you all receive with two tampers or interferes with the monitor? Okay, so a tamper with a monitor, again, if you break the strap, you're going to get what's called a strap tamper. If you remove the monitor from the body, you are going to get a strap tamper followed by a proximity tamper, because there is sensors on the inside of this that it has to be within a 1/4 inch of the body. If it goes outside of that 1/4 of an inch, it will register a proximity tamper. And then if we get a strap tamper followed by a proximity tamper, we definitely look into whether or not it was cut off. And then if it's followed by a no motion, we definitely know that it was cut off. And a no motion is registered at 45 minutes after no motion. So it can sit there for 44 minutes without moving before it registers a no motion. On that 45th minute, that alert goes out saying it's a no motion. And we do that for safety reasons. You know, like on the adult side, we experience a lot of overdoses. So we have actually saved many lives because of that no motion that is occurring. So we don't see that on the juvenile side. On the juvenile side, when we see the no motion, it's been cut every single time. The battery. Okay, so the battery can last, the key is the battery can last up to 60 hours. Now, when these are installed, the juvenile is provided with what's called a client guide, and it specifically states on there that you must charge this battery once a day. So to be honest with you, if you charge this once a day, you should never get a low battery message. We don't tell people that the battery lasts up to 60 hours because we found that they tend to take advantage of that. Juveniles, we find that the majority of them charge every other day, and that seems to be okay. But we still do get a lot of low battery messages and tracker missed callbacks because they're simply not charging the unit. We try to avoid that at all costs by really hammering into them that you need to charge this to stay into compliance. You need to charge this every single day. One of the big rules, and this is going to come to light coming up because the summer months are coming upon us, and that is absolutely positively no swimming with this. And I know that breaks a lot of hearts and everything, but and the real reason for no swimming is GPS simply does not work underwater. I don't care who manufactured that GPS unit, it does not work underwater. So what could happen is that somebody could run into the ocean, cut off their unit, and no alert will go out until this thing floats up to the surface. So that is the real reason why there is no swimming. I know that is a huge complaint. But a lot of people suspect that it's not waterproof. This is waterproof up to 3 feet at 30 minutes. So showers, we highly encourage those. But submerging it is a no-no because, again, loss of GPS. Let's see here. What else do we have on here? That's all I have on this. Do you have any other questions?
Michelle, can you talk about drift points and what we hear that a lot and what that may be or may not be, and if it's really real? Because I think a lot of people will talk, court counselors talk about a drift point. They were supposed to be here and there was a point way out, you know, somewhere. If you can kind of touch on that.
Okay, a drift point, they usually occur in the middle of the night, and that is when the monitor is in range of the beacon, or I'm sorry, within the residential zone or the inclusion zone, and usually, you know, middle of the night, and it's been kind of stationary for a while. And what causes that is this unit is required if it's not recording GPS. Okay, so it records GPS once every 60 seconds. Now, if it's not recording GPS, that is because it is stationary and it is within range of the beacon. Now, for an extended period, this unit will be required to call into the host computer to verify that the unit is in range of that beacon. Now, if we get a stray point, meaning he's within range of the beacon, and then boop, we got a GPS point in the next county, and then there's only one. And then there's no others. That is a solid drift point, because what we look for is a trail of points leading to that point. And there is no way that somebody can travel 232 miles an hour to the next county and come back within a minute. So we look at that because we do record speed of movement. We record how many satellites are capturing that point, and whether or not it is captured simply by a cell tower. And that's 9 times out of 10, it is captured simply by a cell tower. Now, if we have someone that is experiencing a lot of drift points, Carmen will usually call me and say, could you take a look at this? And we do have means to lower the incidences of drift points. And we don't see as many drift points when you have a beacon as opposed to just a charger. And like she had touched on, we don't like to give beacons to people that are in like a transitional type housing, because, you know, the loss of it, the replacement cost of a beacon is $300 versus a charger is $35. However, the incidences of drift points go higher without that beacon. And so we like to have that beacon present. And it also helps conserve the battery. When the person is in range of the beacon, it puts the GPS to sleep to help conserve the battery on that. So I've noticed that since we've increased the number of satellites that we connect to, the incidences of drift points has gone down. And we are actually looking into connecting to even more satellites, and we should see a greater decrease in those drift points. But in North Carolina, we don't have a big problem with it. In certain areas we do. In more rural areas, we're going to see a lot of drift points, but in the more populated areas, because of the number of cell towers that are surrounding the area, we don't have as many drift points. And let's see here. One of the things that keeps coming up that lately that I've been seeing on court orders and search warrants and such is people wrapping them in aluminum foil. That doesn't work. It just doesn't work. There are several different types of technology in here that you would have to have over 25 feet of aluminum foil, and it would have to be placed between the inside of the monitor and the skin. And remember, this must be within 1/4 of an inch. Now, 25 feet of foil measures more than 1 inch. I'm sorry?
Somebody may not be maybe not unmuted.
Yeah, sounds like it. But there's different types of technology within here that if you try to wrap this in aluminum foil, we can still track you. So the aluminum foil does not work. And I can tell within 2 seconds if somebody has tried to what we call shield and do the aluminum foil trick. And I'm sorry, but I'm going to admit I laugh every time that I see it, because it's like, yeah, that didn't work. So, because I think we recently had 2, didn't we, Carmen? We just had 2 that when they were arrested, they had aluminum foil on the unit. And I just went, yeah, that didn't work for them too well.
Yeah, we did. It's evidently a TikTok trend. I don't know. I don't TikTok, but we've heard from some districts that this is a new TikTok trend that's going around for these juveniles, and I guess adults. I don't know, but I mean, I immediately, and we heard it kind of last fall, last summer, we kind of heard talk about this. And so of course I called Michelle immediately, and she's like, Carmen, they can try it, but it's not going to be, they can't do it. And then it's kind of surfaced again in the last probably month to 6 weeks. We've gotten, like she said, we got 2 GPS records requests in the, it was written in the officer statement saying that when they picked the juveniles up, that the units were shielded with aluminum foil. And then we've heard from some districts that have called and said that their juveniles are doing this. And so, it kind of, they like to go with what the trends are and follow along to what other people are telling them. So, but yeah, we did just have 2 recently.
Yeah, I can say that it works on our competitors' equipment, but it does not work on ours. So because again, the different types of technology that we use, it may shield against one technology, but the other technologies are still tracking. So that's why we don't openly disclose to the family, what technologies are in here, meaning the GPS, cellular, and Wi-Fi. There is Wi-Fi connection on here, and it's not, logging into routers or anything like that. But when you are in a position where you're near a Wi-Fi router, it will detect this and say, oh, yep, we've got this monitor right here. So we're going to drop a pinpoint to verify that this monitor is within 60 feet of this router. And so those work off of different types of bandwidths and wavelengths. And so again, impossible to thwart that when you're wrapping it in aluminum foil or an aluminum can. We have seen that as well. So we highly discourage even trying that. So the zone. I know that a lot of questions come up regarding the primary location zone or the residence. The court counselors are to create a zone at the residence. Now, the zone, we have them set it at 300-foot radius, and specifically because the beacon that is placed in the home has a 150-foot radius. So when you are looking at the alerts and events for a client and you see that you have a beacon leave, and then it should be followed by an inclusion zone leave, and then you know that they are outside of their property. So basically that is just a double check system. And also what happens is, again, when you're within range of the beacon, your GPS goes to sleep. And it takes about, on average, 3 minutes for the GPS to wake up once you walk away from that beacon. So you're at 150 feet and now the GPS has to wake back up. You're still within that beacon zone and then the inclusion zone. So you have that extra 150 feet for that 3-minute period for the GPS to wake back up and start recording your movement. And thus the reason why we have the inclusion zone set at 300 feet, because it's a double verify. And then also a lot of people just hang out in their yard. And so we can still collect GPS when they're in their inclusion zone, as long as they're outside of their beacon zone. And the beacon zone is automatic 150 feet. If we were to lower the threshold of the inclusion zone to be closer to the beacon zone, what would happen is we risk losing alerts and events because it's not guaranteed that the GPS is going to be awake in 3 minutes. It could take 5 minutes and then they could slip through that zone and we would not know it. And then we would start picking up GPS points in a random area. So that's why we have that there. And I get a little testy if I don't see it. So we check that all the time to make sure, because it's a fail safe for that system right there, to make sure that we've got the alerts that are going out as they need to go. Any other questions?
Question about the zones when it comes to curfews. So if say somebody has a 6 p.m. curfew, and they miss curfew by say 15 minutes, when will you all be alerted that they've missed curfew? And is there any way that I guess those drift points, would that ever impact that?
Okay, so when it comes to the zones and the curfew, it is built in that there is a grace period. And so what we do is it's 6 p.m. and it's like we get a failure to enter because they did not enter their inclusion zone at that 6 p.m. We hold that and we wait for what we call a pairing. If they enter the inclusion zone within the grace period, we do not alert on it because, again, we have that mandatory grace period that's there. And that was set by DPS, and we do not alter that at all. We go off of what they mandate us to do. And so there will be times where, yeah, they're not going to be pushed. You know, the alert is not going to be pushed. It will be recorded in the alerts and events, though, to show that, yep, he was late getting home, but he got home at, 6:03 instead of 6 o'clock. It will be recorded that he was late. And I'm sorry, what was the second part?
I guess would the drift points ever impact that? So if they, for some reason, it's showing that they're way too far away from their house than they would, then they're supposed to be, how would that impact a curfew report?
So when there is a failure to enter, the monitoring center actually investigates those, and they do look for a drift point. And if it is a drift point, then what they'll do is they will cancel that alert and say drift point verified. So then that way it's not pushed to the court counselor to say, hey, he didn't make it home, when actually it is a drift point. There are actually human beings behind a lot of the alerts and notifications and double checking to make sure the validity of each thing before we send it out to court counselors, or on the adult side, the probation officers, to because we don't want to unnecessarily disturb people in the middle of the night over a drift point. You know what I mean?
Thank you. I don't see any more questions in the chat, but if folks have any other questions, feel free to unmute or put in the chat if you have any questions for Michelle or Carmen. I don't see any, but I really appreciate you all being here. Thank you so much for being here and teaching us about what your procedures and policies are and answering some of our common questions. We will send out the PowerPoint and that information sheet that Carmen referenced in her presentation so that you all have that via email. And Nani will also send up an evaluation in the email as well. But before I end this for today, any last questions? I just want to make sure. Well, thank you so much again, Carmen and Michelle. We appreciate you taking your time on a Friday to teach us. And thank you, everybody, for taking time out of your Friday to join us for this training as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody have a good Friday. Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. You too.